Jason Botchford, obviously from the Vancouver province, and going to take a look back at the 2012-13 season for the Vancouver Canucks. Kind of wasted year almost, especially when you look at how much hope there was at the beginning of the season, how much hope there was when they made the trade for David Booth, and in November where Corey Schneider really made his first pitch to be a number one guy, not only in the NHL, but for the Vancouver Canucks with a sensational run in the second half of November. The team looked a lot like it did the year before as they headed into a game in January in Boston, a game that was filled with drama and revenge. Corey Schneider ended up getting the start, and the Vancouver Canucks found a way to win that game 4-3. I'm not sure that exacted any kind of revenge over what happened in the Stanley Cup final, but at that moment, it sure felt good for that team. Unfortunately, that really was the peak of the Canucks season. They never were the same after that. Now, I think that there's all sorts of reasons why. One, they weren't able to meet again that emotional level that they were able to achieve in that game in Boston. Two, on February 8th, Ryan Kesler makes a hit, tears the labrum in his shoulder. He was never the same player after that. He's really the heart and soul of the team, important in so many different areas. Needed on the power play, needed on the penalty kill, frontline guy that's needed to score goals. He couldn't score any in the last 17 games of the season. And I think now we understand why when we look back at the surgeries that he had in the offseason. A pretty big one to repair that torn labrum in his shoulder, and another one later on for his wrist. We still don't know where Ryan Kesler is yet now in his recovery. Here we are, the end of 2012, and no one is quite sure when he's going to play again. His agent said it could be months. That could put him out maybe the beginning of February, but also could put him out for the rest of the season, if there is one even. And in a 48 game, let's say, shortened NHL season, if the Canucks are without Ryan Kesler, well, they're in a lot of trouble. Yeah, they won another President's Trophy, but they finished a lot further away than that 2% they were to the Cup back in 2010, 2011. This time, they were never really in it. Not really, not in that series against the LA Kings. You started from game one where there was no discipline. You had Ryan Kesler, Alex Burrows running around, shooting their mouth, more into getting under guys like Mike Richards' skin rather than going out there and doing what they do best, and that's play a terrific two-way game and produce offense. Max Lapierre didn't leave Drew Doughty alone. Just kept chirping at him. You don't try to wake up a guy like Drew Doughty, and Drew Doughty ended up having a great series. The Canucks were badly outplayed in those first two games in Vancouver. Roberto Luongo, well, he became a bit of a scapegoat, as Don Cherry would call him. For that, he gets pulled. Corey Schneider comes in, and we have the dawn of a new era. Another point that we're going to take from that 2012-13 season for the Vancouver Canucks, one in which Corey Schneider really earned his spot as the number one guy, and he had a lot of cards stacked against him. Luongo had the long-term deal. Luongo had this relationship with Alain Vigneault, who he had been reluctant to, except for one series against the Chicago Blackhawks, to pull Luongo out of big games, to give Corey Schneider the chance. Go back, you look at that 2011 Stanley Cup final against the Boston Bruins. There were opportunities in that series where Corey Schneider could have started. I'm thinking about the game 4 in Boston. Would have been an ideal place for Corey Schneider to get an opportunity. He didn't in that series. And there was a certain bond that had grown over the years between AV and Roberto, and Corey had to get through that, and he did with some exceptional play. I mean, his January and February when he posted a .950 save percentage was remarkable, and they needed that kind of goaltending. They needed a change in the playoffs, and they got it when Corey came in. He was very good. In fact, in that game 4 with the Canucks on the verge of getting swept, no player on that team showed up in that first period. They were ready to get swept right out of the postseason. But Corey Schneider, he held them in it. And he couldn't do that in that game 5, not in overtime anyway. And a lot of that, game 5, the penultimate moment for the Canucks season, how that finished, I think, reflected on what happened on the months previous. They couldn't score. They get out to that 1-0 lead. Daniel Sedin is on a breakaway. He can't put it on the net. Yannick Hansen's on a 2-on-1. He can't put it on the net. They could never get that breakaway or that goal to put them up by 2 in that game. And when Brad Richardson scored this easy goal in front of the net with 4 Canucks surrounding him, it was tied 1-1. And really from that point on, the Canucks were badly outplayed. In overtime, the third period of Game 5, they were outshot 19-11. They couldn't score. And of course, you go back to the decision that they made on the trade deadline. Would the team have been better if they had kept Cody Hodgson? Would the team have been better if they had traded Cody Hodgson for 2 guys who weren't in the press box for Game 5, and Zach Kassian and Grignani? They couldn't get in the lineup. They couldn't stick. Cody was very successful, put up some points for that team in an offensive, protected type role. They missed that. They ended up missing that after he was traded for Sammy Paulson, this defensive specialist who swept in and couldn't produce a lot of offense, couldn't really shut guys down, and now we can see he was 2 months away from retiring from the NHL. You really have to question the team in that decision. It's not one that worked out. The David Booth trade, it had its moments. He had some games where you thought, okay, he can really gel with this team, give him the speed, he drives the net, he gives them something that they've been missing for a long time. He's able to score 16 goals in the regular season. It was pretty good, given that he only played 50-odd games with the Vancouver Canucks. But in the playoffs, he was nowhere. He only ended up with 7 shots in those 5 games. And that last game, he ended up on that line with Henrik Sedin, and it looked like he had never before played with Henrik Sedin. You know what? He hadn't. And it was ironic that in the end, Alain Vigneault went to a guy to save the day, putting David Booth with Henrik Sedin, and he had opportunity to do that with in the regular season, and he just passed on it. So I think that there's some big questions about this team moving forward. You can start with Ryan Kessler's health. Number 2 is going to be the Roberto Luongo trade. It's inevitable now. He wants to play. He needs to play. It's not going to happen in Vancouver. He's been usurped by Corey Schneider, and that's the guy they've chosen to go with moving forward. What can they get back in a Roberto Luongo deal? What do they need to get back? Well, it suggests that they need to get back a center, especially when you have the Ryan Kessler situation and you have a guy who it's the same story every year. He leaves it all on the ice. He doesn't know how to hold back, and he ends seasons injured, and he ends seasons needing surgery. They need a guy who can step in when Kessler's out of the lineup. They need a center who can, at least hold the fort down for a couple of weeks, and maybe in some cases a playoff series. That's the type of guy. They also need youth. This is a team that now has 9 players who are 30 years or older. The window, well, it's lowering. It's not quite closed yet. I don't think it'll ever be closed as long as the Sedins are playing at a high level and playing for the Vancouver Canucks. But at some point here, they're going to have to get younger. They're going to have to rebuild. And they're going to have to realize that they may have wasted an opportunity, because I think for the past couple of years, and the President's trophies prove it over the course of a regular season, this has been the best team. But they haven't been able to translate that into what matters most, and that's the Stanley Cup.